Tales from the Darkside, Season 1, Episode 11, All a Clone by the Telephone. Wow, that rhymes. About a killer answering machine. That's right, we get another answering machine episode. They had one of these in Monsters, and obviously there's a lot of Seinfeld episodes about the answering machine. This episode was released in 1985, so they were somewhat new. He actually mentions in the beginning of the episode that he had a phone call service that would give him his messages before he got the answering machine. I wasn't even aware these things existed, but let's look at it. Actually, funny enough, it looks like they still have answering services. Here's Moneypenny, like the James Bond Moneypenny. The company claims to have handled over 20 million calls and chats on behalf of its clients who range from one-person teams to multinational enterprises and government agencies. Yeah, that's right. Your girlfriend going on too long, yapping about her day? Just get Moneypenny to take care of it. You don't want to talk to your mom right now because you're super busy? Just get Moneypenny. I should totally do that. How would that work? I guess it's for businesses, but okay. So we get a down-on-his-luck screenwriter by the name of Leon who has not worked in 6 months. They like stories about writers, but I also like stories about writers because they're making a TV series and kind of nudging you about kind of how terrible the actual business is. I think a lot of the people that write these episodes have struggled themselves, so it's easy to put themselves into the main character's shoes of a struggling writer who's trying to get their script made into a movie, which probably isn't going to happen, or even write for a television series like Tales from the Darkside. So Leon is struggling, and then he finds that his answering machine seems to have a mind of its own and actually talks to him in this sinister tone. At first, it seems like the answering machine just wants to ruin his life, break up his relationship from his girlfriend, ruin his career, but as the episode goes on, it seems like the answering machine actually has another intention. The answering machine itself, the actual machine, wants to be famous, just like everybody else. Make me a star.
So just plug me back into the phone line and keep me in fresh batteries. Now, if you wouldn't mind, I got people waiting to hear from me.
You see, the answering machine is making phone calls for Leon that he didn't make himself. The evil answering machine is calling his girlfriend Dolores and making fun of her mother. And there's also this thing between him and Dolores where she wants to get married, because she's a female, and he doesn't want to get married. So they kind of have this back and forth. The answering machine will kind of be like, oh, I want to marry you, Dolores. And she goes, really? Thanks. And then Leon has to deal with the fact that he actually doesn't want to marry her. So the answering machine calls Dolores, makes fun of her mother, and then tries to make up with her by saying he wants to marry her. And he goes to visit his girlfriend Dolores, which we see here. And apparently she lives in a very, very cold apartment. And they end up working things out, at least for now. The answering machine wakes up Leon and kind of bosses him around in this very sarcastic tone. It mentions that the answering machine is in an alternate universe, or at least Leon is in an alternate universe. So I guess that's their explanation for why this answering machine is allowed to mimic his voice, make phone calls, and talk on its own. It's an alien or an alternate universe? Okay, sure. But then what happens is that Leon is actually able to disconnect this answering machine, and it actually works. I would have thought that because it has supernatural powers, he could bash it, he could throw it out the window, he could unplug it, and none of that would matter. The answering machine would just, come back to life. But that's actually not what happens. He's actually able to successfully dismantle this answering machine. And I think this is a cool effect, because in the middle of the episode, we don't just get the same repeat of the answering machine torturing him the entire time. He actually gets a couple-minute reprieve from this answering machine and is able to live his life. But then, at the end, realizes, maybe he needs this answering machine. So it's kind of a cool effect. You get it at the beginning, then you get it at the end. You get a little bit of a intermission where Leon is dealing with his own problems, with his girlfriend, and with his job on his own. The alternate universe seems to be trying to contact him, as he'll be walking down the street, and then a guy with a cool 80s car phone will say, hey, Leon, the phone's for you. He'll also get a lot of phone calls at home. So I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure what this is, outside of them referencing an alternate universe where somehow he's someone else. And the answering machine, while it was unplugged and then he smashed his videotape recording machine, is still kind of somewhat alive. But then he gets a call from his boss and wants him to meet with a famous producer that loves his new miniseries idea. The problem? Leon doesn't remember this miniseries idea because it was the answering machine that did it for him. See, this answering machine apparently has a lot of great script ideas, and Leon himself does not. The character Leon is played by Harry Anderson, and he does a really good job. He portrays a guy in his late 20s who wants to be perpetually single, not get married, not tied down, but is also really neurotic. Kind of like a young Nicolas Cage. He seems to have a lot of energy, but he doesn't really get around to writing very much. He bounces around, kind of yells, screams, and the character really looks the part and acts the part. The set's pretty nice too in his apartment. They have pictures of his inspirations, Marilyn Monroe, the director Orson Welles, a photo of the Maltese Falcon. All people that he inspires to be, but hasn't been able to reach that level of success, not without the help from his friends. So this answering machine is apparently contacting these producers and giving them miniseries ideas. There's kind of a funny part where he's talking to the producer and he has to kind of BS his way through it. He's like, hey, what's the miniseries idea? And he's like, you tell me what it's about. And he's like, well, you tell me what it's about. And he goes, no, you tell me. So he's trying to get the guy to tell him what it's about. Because of course he doesn't know. The answering machine did it. So he goes back to his apartment and finally plugs back in the answering machine, apologizes to it, and they live happily ever after. It seems like this answering machine is going to fulfill his dreams and make him rich and famous, but it's not going to be easy on Leon. It wakes him up in the middle of the night and has him start writing scripts. And he's obviously out of it, smoking, drinking, and this is going to be his life from now on. Once again, I think they're kind of trying to take a shot at Hollywood here. You got to work really hard in order to make some money on selling scripts, and that's exactly what Leon's going to do. I give this episode a 6 out of 10. I really do think it's a little better than average. Most of the other reviews have it around a 5, but I think the character Leon does a really good job and portrays this type of lifestyle in the mid-80s very well.
Sounds like a great idea. Mission accomplished. Right, Leon?
Not quite. I still have to get you home safe.
So, after you take me back to my place, how about we do some, overtime?
Sorry.
Somehow I knew you'd say that, but it doesn't hurt to ask, you know?
The character Leon was played very well by Harry Anderson. He played the character Richie Tozar in the great original It TV miniseries. The original, 1990, not the remakes. And then was in 193 episodes of Night Court and 98 episodes of Dave's World. Dick Miller played Leon's boss, and he was a staple in Roger Corman movies. And the really underrated A Bucket of Blood from 1959, and a year later, The Little Shop of Horrors. He went on to do Chopping Mall, The Howling, Twilight Zone, and a bunch of B movies. And he lived to the ripe old age of 90 years old and died in 2019. Next up is episode 12, In the Cards. See you next week.
She's sipping sweet tea on the back porch swing with the laptop open, listening to him sing. Reviews and stories from a dark past time, crypt tales and old plots line by line. From forgotten classics to those well known, each movie, each show, each Twilight Zone. He's got that charm of passion so true, breaking it down just for me and you. So hit that button, subscribe today. TV Anthology's got a lot to say.